Today's episode of Adventure Unfiltered was recorded in a place that feels very fitting for this conversation, Ocean Vertical's headquarters. Ocean Vertical is an ethical adventure company based in East Lothian, Scotland, where today's guest, Mollie Hughes, is a director. Recording here inside her indoor workspace felt significant. From the moment I arrived, Mollie made me feel calm, grounded and completely at ease, and that quiet confidence really runs through everything she does. So as many of you will know, Mollie is perhaps best known for her relationship with the world's highest mountain and with some of the most extreme places on earth. In 2017, she became the first Englishwoman to climb Mount Everest from both the south and the north sides. But Mollie's relationship with Everest began long before she ever set foot on the mountain. She studied psychology and sports biology, and her university dissertation focused on the psychology of climbing Everest, exploring how the mind responds under extreme pressure. That academic curiosity went on to shape her future expeditions. She also has a deep love for Scotland and for the water. As a surfer, paddleboarder, sea kayaker and wild swimmer, and she's a public speaker and the author of 2 amazing books. Alongside all of this, Mollie is the first female president of Scouts Scotland, where she continues to inspire young people to build confidence, resilience and a strong sense of self through adventure. This conversation is part 1 of a 2-part series. In this episode, we focus on Everest. Not the headlines, but the reality behind them. Fear, mindset, resilience, and what it really takes to keep going day after day in extreme environments. So let's go. This is Mollie Hughes and the truth about summiting Everest. Welcome, Mollie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we are sat in the beautiful offices, would you call it, at Ocean Vertical?
Yeah, it's our base, and it's kind of just on the edge of the John Muir Country Park near Dunbar. It's like a big old farm building. So I was showing you around the changing rooms this morning, which are old horse stables and our co-working spaces, horse stables. But it's nice, isn't it? A beautiful autumnal day.
It is absolutely beautiful. And we are sat here in front of a roaring fire with a cup of hot coffee. And it feels very cosy and lovely to have a conversation about all these amazing adventures you've had and to find out more about kind of what makes you tick when it comes to these things. Before we jump into that, I remember the first time I saw you was when me and my dad came to see you at Bathgate Academy.
Oh, yeah.
And that was when you did a talk about Everest, but it was for I think it was fundraising for the Polar Academy.
Yep.
Was that right?
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, it was just completely inspirational to me because I was just kind of coming back to adventuring after not a long period off. I just kind of rediscovered it around about that time. Yeah. And we thought, oh my God, Mollie Hughes is coming to Bathgate Academy. We have to go see her. And it was just so inspirational and incredible just to find out your journey about Everest.
Oh, that's so lovely to hear. It feels like such a long time ago now, doesn't it?
It was. And it's bizarre as well thinking back because my good friend Iona, like I hadn't met her at that point, but she had just started her hiking community.
Yep.
And she was sat in front of me on the row in front. And although we didn't talk then, I was like, I'm sure it's that Iona girl from Instagram. And we obviously now we're like firm friends and close friends. I just find it incredible the amount of connections that you make in the adventuring world.
There's moments and there's times where you don't realise how different your life is going to be in 5-10 years' time.
Yeah,
but they all kind of stem from those interesting moments.
It is those interesting moments. And of course, you know my husband as well, Ollie Bray.
Yeah.
And that's another connection that
from
we have
a long
as well.
time ago when I was a teenager.
Yeah, that was back, was it the Dorset?
Yeah, we're both part of the Dorset Expeditionary Society, which is an amazing organisation out of Weymouth. When I grew up on the south coast, Devon, not Dorset. And he was part of it. He's a few years older than me. He was kind of leading expeditions when I was a youngster going on different expeditions. And it was actually the organisation that kind of opened my eyes to travel and to doing kind of hard stuff abroad and exploring and seeing different mountain ranges. So yeah, awesome that he was a part of that too.
I was brought up in a family where we were like everyday adventurers, if you like. Yeah. So, you know, we would ski and we would hike and we would camp. What did your childhood look like?
Yeah, similar. So yeah, I grew up on the south coast of Devon, a place called Torbay. It's kind of known as the English Riviera, so it's like a really kind of touristy little spot in South Devon.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's stunning. On a good day, on a sunny day, it's lovely. So a lot of the time it was kind of adventures in the sea. The sea's just there on every turn. You can see the sea in front of you. So lots of time, in the water, at the beach. Kind of started surfing and kayaking in my kind of teenage years. Quite a bit of kind of hiking. So we've got Dartmoor, just kind of a stone's throw, kind of into the middle of Devon. So a lot of time, on Dartmoor, but nothing extreme. Like Devon is far from mountains. Maybe the furthest, apart from Cornwall, that you can get from mountains in the UK. So mountains didn't come into my kind of life at all until I was 17. And when I was 17, my school was organising a trip through the Dorset Expeditionary Society. And I guess for people that don't know about it, which is probably most people, it's a charity that gets young people into adventure and into expeditions, and they make it kind of affordable for people, and they go into schools and take school groups. And my school in South Devon was a big, rough, comprehensive. And trips like that weren't, like, opportunities and trips like that didn't come around a lot. But when this one did, I knew I had to jump at it. And it was the chance to go to East Africa, to go to Kenya, to climb Mount Kenya, if we were lucky, to go on safari, to do some kind of charity work and meet and spend time with the locals. And I just jumped at that opportunity, raised the money by like backpacking in supermarkets, selling most of my parents' possessions at like car boot sales. We got the money together and went off. And that completely opened my eyes to adventure, to mountains. We did Mount Kenya to Point Leana, and it was awesome, like above 5,000 meters. Stunning views, stunning scenery, and I felt okay up there. I felt happy to be there. And then just kind of throughout the rest of school and uni, I would save up as much money as I could in the term time and head off on trips during the summer. So the year after that, I went with the same organisation to India, to the Indian Himalayas, and did some stuff there. The year after, got to go on the Andes trip, which is to Ecuador, and do some climbing the volcanoes of Andes. And through that kind of process, I just made some really good friends who were into the same stuff as me,
it's
wanted to
important,
travel.
isn't it?
Totally.
Surround yourself by those people.
Absolutely. And we just started doing our own thing and planning expeditions ourselves and going off and traveling and climbing and seeing places, and completely like on a shoestring budget for all of it, and some interesting situations that we definitely got ourselves into. But we got to see the world, and we went and climbed Kilimanjaro together, and we went to Morocco and did like Jebel Toubkal, and to the Alps, the European Alps, and all sorts of places. And that kind of led me up to the end of university.
Yeah, and so it seems to me like, you've started in the water and you've literally just gone up and up and up and up and then higher and higher. When did the idea of Everest come around then? Was it just because you had given yourself the confidence by doing these really, really high mountains, and you thought, well, why not just try for the highest peak in the world?
I mean, I think the confidence is a huge part of it. And if I hadn't had that first opportunity with the Dorset Expeditionary Society, or carried on travelling, carried on doing more, I wouldn't have had anywhere near the confidence to even let the idea of Everest come into my mind. But it really kind of came in my last year at uni. So I was studying sports psychology at the University of the West of England in Bristol. And at the end of uni, I had to write my dissertation, so my big essay project, 10,000 odd words. And I knew I had to write about something really interesting for me to actually commit and write this project. And I could do anything under the bracket of sports psychology. And I played netball and I played football, but I just didn't think they were quite enough to grip me and make me kind of sit down and write about them. So I thought, what's my other passion? And mountaineering obviously sprang into my head. I loved it. I loved everything about it. And I thought, what's kind of one of the biggest challenges in mountaineering psychologically? And Everest comes to mind because it's the highest mountain in the world, the most famous mountain in the world. People that climb it must have really interesting psychological journeys. It's not the same as people just going off and climbing other mountains because it's got so much prestige and history around it and pressure. So I decided to do my dissertation all about the psychology of Everest climbers. I found 7 guys, only guys at the time, all around the UK, and I travelled and I met with them and I sat down and interviewed them a little bit like this in various places from London to the Lake District, and just got hooked.
Yeah.
Like even just chatting to the first guy, this guy Scott in London, and he was describing the Western Coombe and scaling the Loxie Face, and just the way he spoke about these places, I knew I didn't want to just write about it. I wanted to one day see it and experience it, and I guess if I was lucky enough, get to the top, but it was more about just being on the mountain and seeing Everest for myself.
Yeah, that is so interesting about the psychology side of it. And when you are interviewing these men, What did you find out? What is the psychology behind it? Is there anything that kind of struck you? You were like, oh, okay. Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah, like super varied. So these 7 guys were all from completely different backgrounds, but more importantly, they all had really different motivations for wanting to be there. Some of them, well, a couple of them, they were kind of military and they were doing it for a friend who they lost while serving in Afghanistan. So they had that motivation of it was his dream and now they're taking on his dream, and that just propelled them every single step on the mountain. There was another guy who just kind of, he was a mountaineer and a mountain guide. He just kind of fell into an expedition with friends. They were going and he decided to join. And so it was just a fun expedition the whole time. And that really helped him to enjoy it and not put too much focus on the summit. And then other guys who had been like a childhood ambition and they had thought about it every single day for their whole lives. And that's such different motivation and pressure as well. So everyone had a very different psychological journey on the mountain. I think that the bits that I pulled, there were bits that I definitely didn't pull. I was like, that is not how I'm going to climb it ever, which was good. It's great to learn that way. But the bits that I did pull from some of them, I guess the main thing was to be super pragmatic. And most of that came from a guy, Tim, from the Lake District, who's an awesome climber. And his whole view is to be so pragmatic about absolutely everything. You're not focusing on the summit. If you get there or you don't, it doesn't actually matter. You're focusing on every single day, doing your best every single day, and celebrating all those tiny little achievements.
Yeah.
And if you put them all together, because the expedition's like 60 days, it's
huge.
almost 2 months.
It's massive, isn't it?
And you can't think about that scale of it. And the hills, the mountain is huge. It's too big to think about the whole entirety of it. So just breaking it down, focusing on each day and celebrating all the good things and not beating yourself up too much about the things that don't go wrong or don't go your way was such interesting psychology and stuff I brought on every single expedition I've done since then.
I guess you would have probably had an image in your head or a feeling about how you would approach it and how you would cope. But I can also imagine that it's not just about the physical training, but the psychological training.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do you even begin to train yourself physically and mentally for Everest?
And it's super hard. And at the time, like I was 21 when I climbed. So most of the training was when I was kind of 20. I was young. I didn't know anything about, well, I didn't know much at all about training, physically, mentally. The biggest challenge, so I wanted to finish uni, finish my dissertation, and I wanted to go a year later. Well, actually kind of like 10 months later. I wanted to go in the April the following year. And there were kind of 3 big things I had to do. The first one was to raise all the money. So Everest is unbelievably expensive. Like I think at the time it was 2012 and I needed almost £40,000.
Yes.
It's even more than that these days, like way more than that. So I had to raise that money. I didn't have any money, don't come from any money, had to work out how to get that money together. And I was looking through kind of corporate sponsorship, so trying to get big companies on board. So that was a huge challenge, full of lots of rejection, lots of perseverance. The other one was to increase my mountaineering experience. So I'd climbed, a good amount around the world, but nothing like Everest, nothing as high as Everest. So I had to go off to the Alps, I had to go off to the Himalayas and climb as much as I could. And that one depended on me making the money and getting the money as well. And the third one was to train physically and mentally. And I didn't know tons about it. I knew I had to do it. I was still at uni at the time, so I went down to kind of the sports hub and met this really great guy who was a strength and conditioning coach called Steve Locke. And I just told him about my plans. And it must, like looking back, it must have sounded ridiculous. Like me just turning up, a 20-year-old with, not that much mountaineering experience or not that much worldly experience, being like, okay, I'm going to climb Everest in 10 months' time and I need some help. But straight away he was like, okay, this is what we're going to do and we're going to put this whole program together. And he just looked after me and took me on board for a whole year of training, which was awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And
that's really good because it is so incredibly young.
Yeah.
When I think back when I was 20, gosh, I don't think I can think back then. I would not have been in the kind of right frame of mind. So I guess it shows as well that not only does it take that kind of grit and determination, having that support round about you to make it work, I think is hugely important.
And people just not laughing at you and just believing you and saying we can do that.
Yes.
That just grows your self-belief so much.
Was there any point where you thought, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm only 20. Why am I aiming for Everest? Was there any point where that kind of self-doubt kicked in?
Not really.
That's wonderful to hear.
Which is why it's wild thinking back.
Yes.
Because I didn't feel like I was 20. Like looking back now and seeing 20-year-olds is so unbelievably young.
Yes.
But at the time I felt like an adult.
You felt ready?
I felt ready. I felt in control. There were blockers, like the money was a huge blocker, the getting the fit, the obviously environmental conditions of Everest and the things that can block you. But mentally, I felt ready.
You felt ready,
like
and you would have to be, I imagine, incredibly strong mentally. I imagine there was many times on the mountain where you were perhaps questioning your life choices, or was there any point where you felt real fear, like you had maybe never felt it before?
Yeah, lots of times. I think like from doing the dissertation, I kind of felt like I knew how hard it was going to be, and I knew all the challenges, and I researched every inch of this mountain, like really obsessively researched it. But when I got there, I kind of realized that you can spend all that time like in your university bedroom at your desk studying it, but when you get there and you're physically experiencing it, the pain and the suffering is a million times worse and a million times harder. And fear played a huge role in it, especially in places like the Khumbu Icefall, where it's it's basically where the glaciers come down through the Khumbu Valley, and then the glacier floor is kind of steepened, which creates this big compression of ice. So it's a space that you walk through for, depending on how acclimatized you are, for like between 8 hours and maybe 4 hours. And you're crossing massive crevasses, and there's big lumps of ice like teetering on top of each other that can all move because it's a moving glacier. Completely terrifying environment to be in. Because
I've heard as well that obviously the sounds that it makes when it's moving, it's just like big cracks and booms.
Yeah, totally. It creaks and it feels like it's alive.
Where do you go in that point? Because I know how I cope when I'm really scared about something. You know, there's part of me that almost has to shut down a little bit emotionally to be able to get me through that point. And then for me, it's afterwards that I have to process it and I have to kind of let it out at that point. So how did you cope with that fear?
Yeah, it was definitely a learning curve. And so I have a fear of heights.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I always have. I think I probably always will. And a big part of, so my book that's just come out, Breathe, it's about my adventures that we're going to talk about, but it's also about the psychology of adventure.
Yes.
And the book starts with so there's 7 chapters in it, 7 sections, and the first section is all about fear. And I knew it was something I wanted to research, learn a bit more about, because I experienced it so much, especially on the south side of Everest, especially in the Khumbu Icefall. So I've always had this fear of heights. And when you get to the edge of one of those crevasses and you're looking down and there's like 50 meters of air and this bottomless crevasse beneath you, and you've got to cross a ladder, so a metal ladder with your crampons on, metal crampons scraping on the metal of the ladder. Complete fear, your legs feel so weak, your heart rate is up, your respiratory rate is up, your hands are clammy under your massive mountaineering gloves. You feel the whole kind of physiological response. And I very quickly had to learn how to control that physiological response, because in the Khumbu Icefall there was something like 27 or 28 of these ladders we had to cross. And we went through the Khumbu Icefall 4 or 5 times on the trip. So crossing them over 100 times. And then beyond the Khumbu Icefall, you've got huge kind of faces to go up, like the Lexi face. You've got big ridges to go along with 2,000 meter drops on each side. There was going to be more and more challenge and more fear. So yeah, very early on I knew I had to address this fear and learn to control it, or I was never going to get to the top or anywhere near the top. So I think I just kind of tried to understand what fear was, and it's kind of materializes as this full body physical response that we feel. We've all felt it. But actually, what is it? And what it is just an ancient emotion, a really old emotion. That's one of the oldest, most innate emotions that we've had. And I think fear is actually one of the reasons why the human race has got to where it has.
Is this fight or flight?
Yeah, partly that. And it's been there since early humans, and it's kept us safe for such a long time. It's made us stay and fight some sort of obstacle, or it's made us run away from it as fast as we possibly can, and that's kept us safe. But these days, I think in this kind of modern world, it can act a little bit too much. So it's such an ingrained emotion that happens so quickly. But actually these days, I want to do something like climb a mountain, but this response is triggered, so I have to learn how to control it. I often kind of viewed it as like an overprotective parent, so one that was trying to keep me safe the whole time. But like any overprotective parent, there is a time where you have to like cut them loose or push them away a little bit and say, no, I've got this. To achieve my full potential, you can't be stopping me and you can't be hovering over me. So that's kind of how I viewed the fear, and it kind of worked. I mean, I still feel fear, even when I'm climbing at home in Scotland. Even when I'm like crossing the Forth Road Bridge, I feel that kind of anxiety, that feel coming.
Yeah. like anybody, I feel fear, I feel anxiety. And I guess over the years, like when you're putting yourself in situations when, you know, you're on a ledge or you're doing a climb or, you know, an exposed scramble. And for me, it is that response, that like physiological response.
Yeah.
And it's understanding that that is actually your friend, that the panic that you're feeling or the fear that you're feeling is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's actually a really positive thing because it's your body keeping you alive. Sure. It's telling you, okay, wait a minute, you need to be really, really careful here. Sure, it's not Everest. It might be like an everyday thing for me, but I know that so many people listening to this will relate to that as well.
And then people always ask, like, so how do you actually cope with it? So I think the recognition is one thing. Realizing that it is your friend is what's kept us alive for such a long time. It's not a bad thing. It's not a scary thing or a negative thing. And then kind of one of the reasons, like I called the book Breathe for so many reasons, but one of them is just how powerful it is just to breathe through a situation, taking those kind of deep breaths, recentering yourself, slowing down your heart rate, slowing down your respiratory rate is such a good way to deal with it. And it puts things into perspective a bit more.
We've made our way from the ocean and we've got higher and higher and higher. You're at the top of Everest. How did that feel? Did it feel bizarre and unreal, or did it, you know, did you give yourself time to process?
Yeah, not at all. So like the first time, so it was 2012 on the south side. We'd been on the mountain for kind of like 6.5 weeks, 7 weeks. And the final section from Camp 4 to the top, so from the South Col to the top, had taken like 12 hours. So a huge amount of time of climbing in a death zone where there's such little oxygen to support life. Your body's deteriorating rapidly. It's pretty much kind of dying on itself when you're up there. So by the time I got to the top, I was exhausted. Yeah. Unbelievably exhausted. It was a busy day. So this day in 2012 was the first day that you saw queuing, first day that you saw queuing on the mountain, and lots of people. It was a busy place. And I always knew that, it sounds morbid, but statistically, if you're going to die on Everest, you're going to do it on the way down, not the way up. Because on the way down, you're exhausted. You've been in the death zone for so long. So easy to make mistakes, to trip on your crampons, to not clip into a rope properly, to do any of these things. To get to the top, I felt no sense of happiness or achievement. I just felt like relief, a lot of relief that we made it. And relief that it was all downhill. So I didn't have I was exhausted, I didn't have to climb uphill anymore, was a big relief. A relief that I didn't have to deal with the disappointment of not summiting. But I knew that was the time to focus. We had to get down this mountain, and we had to get down steadily and as safely as we could.
When I'm on top of a Monroe and you're on your way down, you can see the car park. You're like, oh, there's the car park. This is not going to take long at all. Then you think to yourself, this car park is not getting any closer. And then hours pass and you're like, it's still not. And I'm not suggesting there's a car park in Everest, but say you're going back down to camp or you're walking back down and you can maybe see it from a while away. Do you think, oh, there it is there? And then it's like hours later and it's still not there.
Yeah, and I guess the big thing about Everest, when you go into the summit from, say, Camp 4, the final camp, you go in the middle of the night. So we left at 8 p.m, so it was completely pitch black. So you couldn't see anything until you got close-ish to the top. But on the way down, you're turning around, you're facing outwards, and you can see, the sun's up, you can see, well, the whole of the Himalayas brought up beneath you firstly, the whole of Nepal, the whole of Tibet. But then after a while, you could see Camp 4, the South Col. And it never got any closer.
Yeah, it's always the way. What do you take to eat? Was it very regimented and very specific what you had to eat? Or did you think to yourself, I'm going to pop some squashies in and eat them while I'm going?
Yeah, it was very relaxed. So at base camp, on both sides of the mountain, actually, we had a great Nepalese team looking after us. So a great Sherpa team and Nepalese people. And there was a cook and people that would make great food for us. All sorts of things, from curries. Sometimes I do chips, and that was the best thing.
Oh, nice.
So we were very well looked after at base camp. But then on the mountain itself, you're cooking for yourself. So you're melting snow and ice that you just collect from near your tent, and using that boiling water to pour it in like a rehydrated sachet of food. And they varied. Different brands, different dinners. Some were better than others. But the main thing was that they were just packed full of calories. Took as many snacks as we could up there. I remember having a lot of Pringles on the south side of the mountain, which were great. Nice. Good and salty. And
that's good to hear. I always imagined, I guess, it would be really regimented of exactly what you had to eat.
Yeah.
But
I think one of the big things is altitude suppresses your appetite quite a bit. There's loads of challenges with altitude, but one of them is it suppresses your appetite. But you're burning so many calories every minute of the day that you need to eat as much as you can. So at that point, getting any form of calorie in, anything you can stomach, is important. It's more important getting the fuel in rather than what it actually is.
I mean, it's an incredible achievement. Do you remember a point where it maybe hit you? If I've done something big and challenging that's full of fear and I'm very anxious about it, once it's over, you know, it's like the type 2 fun. You know, I'll maybe get to a point where I let myself feel it and I probably have a cry and I feel relief and pride. Did you have any kind of moment, any kind of like emotional moment where you were like, bloody hell, I've just climbed Everest?
I think like maybe a few over the next few weeks afterwards. I guess the big one was when we, on the south side, so the first time I was there, when we stepped out of the Khumbu Icefall and back into base camp and back into the safety of base camp. Because before that, we'd been in the icefall, we'd been high on the mountain, we'd been near the summit, and that kind of anxiety and fear is always there. It's always sitting over you. Your cortisol levels are probably through the roof the whole time. You're constantly on edge. But as soon as we stepped into the safety of base camp, I kind of knew that we were safe and that
you could relax.
We could relax, and that was just like a massive wave that came over us. And that's when the exhaustion really hit. But we got back up to our camp, and one of the amazing kind of Sherpa guys had made us a cake. He didn't even have an oven, but somehow he'd baked a cake. And said congratulations on it, and he presented it to us, and it was just an amazing celebration when we got back to base camp.
That's incredible. Was there anything that then you took on after that first experience to the second experience? Because of course it would have been a completely different experience because you summited from the other side.
Yeah.
But was there kind of lessons that you took from that first one that gave you more confidence for the second one?
Yeah, like 100%. Like the second time was 5 years later. So I was 5 years older. I was 26. Yep, 26 when I went back. And I was on the north side of the mountain, so the Tibetan side, which is kind of thought to be a bit harder because it's on the north side, so it's kind of colder, it's windier, a bit more exposed. You also spend more time in the death zone, so more time above 8,000 meters. The final camp 3, is actually at 8,300 meters. But the really good thing about the north side is it's quieter. So maybe a third of the people on that side of the mountain, and it's remote and it's stunning and it feels like proper mountaineering.
Yeah.
Whereas on the south side, it just felt a little bit busy and a little bit like just there's so many people around. But the north felt like what I really wanted from Everest and what I had been missing. Being that bit older, having done tons of stuff in those 5 years to grow my confidence further, I felt so much more ready for it. And I think I enjoyed almost every moment of that expedition, of that 2-month expedition.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. That's really, really good. I think maybe being a bit older and having the experience and kind of knowing almost what to expect with certain things.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I read your introduction at the start here, it's the first woman to, which I think is absolutely amazing. Was that one of your motivations to do it the first time, or was that something that you were like, oh, wait a minute, actually, I'm going to be the youngest woman to summit Everest if I do this?
So, really good question. The records are cool and they sound really good in like podcast introductions, but they've never been like a motivator for me.
Okay.
They've just been a tool to raising the money. So all these big trips I do are unbelievably expensive, and you need to get corporate sponsorship, so to get companies on board who will like part way with their marketing budget for you to go off and do a trip and put their logos all over you and believe in you. You have to have some sort of unique selling point. And on the south side, I think I was going to be one of the youngest. And then on the north side, I was going to be the youngest woman to do it from the north and the south side. And I used that as much as I could to try and bring these sponsors on board. But that wasn't a motivator. That wasn't why I wanted to be there. It doesn't matter. Like someone a year older than me, 2 years older than me that's done it. It's all just individual experiences.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to see the mountain and be on the mountain. But yeah, then when I got back, I think actually maybe on the north side, I was going for the record of being the first English woman to do it from the north and the south side.
Okay.
Which I did. But then when we got back to Kathmandu, I think we were speaking to somebody who works for the Himalayan database, so they have records of everyone that's ever climbed a mountain in the Himalayas, and chatting to her, and then we kind of realised that I was the youngest woman to do it from the north and south side.
Oh,
so I didn't actually have to use that record to get the sponsorship. I used the first English
But that's
woman.
just what, that was a consequence of it. I remember talking to my daughter, using that fact allowed me to kind of open up a conversation with her about that, about like the first woman, the youngest woman. saying that maybe she doesn't have to, climb Mount Everest. Women can do it too. Women can be the first to do these things too. And it was really lovely to be able to use that. So even although that's like a beautiful consequence of what happened, I think it's really, really strong. And I don't think I'll be the first mum to have, used that to open up a conversation with their daughters about it. And I think it's a lovely fact. I think it's really, really wonderful. And if there was an award to give, I would give it to you.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's good to hear. Because I think I've always kind of parted ways with it a little bit, because it feels a little bit egotistical to me, and I knew it wasn't my motivator.
It's wonderful.
But I think it's a nice way to connect with people and inspire people. So yeah, maybe I should reclaim it a little bit more these days.
I think you absolutely should. Listening back to this conversation, what stayed with me wasn't the altitude or the headlines. It was Mollie's honesty about what it really takes to keep going. Not focusing on the summit, but on each day, each small decision, each moment where mindset matters as much as strength. There's a real calmness in the way Mollie speaks about Everest, a steadiness that comes from understanding fear rather than trying to ignore it. And I think that's what makes this conversation so powerful. It's not about conquering a mountain, but about learning how to stay present when things feel overwhelming. This is part 1 of our 2-part conversation with Mollie. In next week's episode, we move from Everest to Antarctica, to Mollie's solo expedition from the edge of the continent of the geographic South Pole. A very different landscape indeed, but many of the same questions. What about resilience, isolation, decision making, and what happens when you're completely on your own with your own thoughts? Adventure Unfiltered is about sharing stories. Stories that stay with you, and stories that might help you see things a little differently. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd really appreciate if you could help me by sharing this story with others. Tell a friend who you think would enjoy this conversation. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and if you're able to, leave a review. It genuinely helps more people find the show. Thank you for listening, sharing, and for being part of this growing Adventure Unfiltered community. Until next time, keep adventuring, and don't forget, in the wild, we remember who we are.